Good day everyone. We are here to present our topic, steering and sailing rules. So the steering and sailing rules part B of the international regulations for preventing collisions at sea or coal rigs are the foundational maritime traffic laws. They establish requirements for maintaining a lookout, determining collision risks, and taking clear, timely action to safely navigate and avoid collisions across all visibility conditions. So in Rule 11, Application. The rules in Section 2 do not apply to a vessel which has detected another vessel by radar and has established that risk of collision exists if the other vessel cannot be sighted visually. And Rule 19 of Section 3 applies only to vessel navigating in or near an area of restricted visibility. In restricted visibility, vessel may initially have to comply with Rule 19 of Section 3, then subsequently have to comply with the rules of Section 2 when they come into visual sight of one another. And in Rule 12, Sailing Vessels, this rule will not apply if one of the vessels under sail is also using propelling machinery. A sailing vessel with the wind on the port side sees the green sidelight of another sailing vessel of windward at night and is unable to determine whether the other vessel has the wind on the same side and is required to keep out of the way, or has the wind on the starboard side, is required to keep her course and speed. In such circumstances, she is required to keep clear, taking into account of the possibility that the other vessel may take avoiding action. A sailing vessel which has the wind on the starboard side and sees the red sidelight of another sailing vessel to windward at night may also be unable to determine whether the other vessel has the wind on the port or the starboard side. Thus, the other vessel has the wind on the port of the starboard side. The other vessel is required to keep out of the way, so course and speed should be maintained.
Rule 13. Overtaking. Every vessel overtaking any other is obliged to keep clear of the overtaking vessel and to pass at a safe distance. If a vessel coming up relatively close to another vessel from any direction more than 22.5 degrees above her starboard beam and subsequently turns to port to come onto a crossing course, she is not relieved of the duty of keeping clear. A vessel overtaking is not required to avoid crossing ahead to the other vessel but altering course or reducing speed in order to pass astern of the vessel. Being overtaken may be the safe for avoiding action. A PD vessel which approaches another PD vessel from a direction approximately 22.5 degrees above her beam may be in doubt as to whether she is an overtaking vessel or a crossing vessel. Such a vessel to assume that she is overtaking and keep out of the way. So in Rule 14, head-on situation. The rule applies to cases in which each vessel sees the mast or masthead lights of the other nearly in a line and nearly ahead, but the vessels appear likely to pass dangerous close to each other, starboard to starboard or port to port. Vessel meeting starboard to starboard so as to involve risks of collision should make an early and substantial alteration to starboard to achieve a port-to-port passing. When a vessel is in doubt as to whether a meeting or crossing situations exist, she should assume that Rule 14 applies and alter course to starboard. Whether PD vessels are meeting on reciprocal courses or crossings at fine angle, it is important that neither vessel should alter course to port. Several pollution have been caused as a result of one vessel altering course to port to increase the passing distance and the other vessel turning to starboard. And Rule 15, crossing situation. This rule apply the two PD vessels are crossing so as to involve risk of collision. The vessel with the other on her own starboard side shall keep out of the way and shall avoid crossing ahead of the other vessel. This rule does not apply to two PD vessels crossing so as to involve risk of collisions if one of the PD vessels is in UC or RAM and engaged in the fishing. A vessel engaged in towing such as several restricts the towing vessel and her tow in their ability to deviate from their course exhibiting RAM is not required to keep out of PD vessel crossing from her starboard side. A towing vessel other than RAM is considered as an ordinary PD vessel. A vessel constrained by her draught is expected to keep out of the way of a PD which is crossing from her starboard side so as to involve risk of pollution.
In Rule 16, action by giveaway vessel. Every vessel which is directed to keep out of the way of another vessel shall, so far as possible, take early and substantial action to keep well clear. This rule applies to a PD vessel required to keep clear of another PD vessel crossing from the starboard side. Action take to avoid collision should be such as result in passing at a safe distance. Any alteration of courses or speed should be made in ample time and be large enough to be readily apparent to another vessel. In Rule 17, action by stand-on vessel. A vessel is only required to maintain her course and speed in a two-vessel situation. This rule does not apply if the two vessels concerned are not in visual sight of each other or if there is no risk of collision. A stand-on vessel may take action at earlier stage to avoid collision by her maneuver alone in order to avoid immediate danger. A stand-on vessel is permit to keep her course and speed until collision cannot be avoided by the giveaway vessel alone. The obligation of the stand-on vessel to continuously assess the situation when risk of collision exists and subsequently to take action before collision becomes inevitable. And in other Rule 17 action by stand-on vessel, a PD vessel to avoid turning to port of avoid collision with another PD vessel crossing from her own port side. When a stand-on vessel finds himself to close that collision cannot be avoided by the giveaway vessel alone, she is required to take action. When collision with another vessel is considered to inevitable, the engines should be stopped and the helm should be used so as to achieve a glancing blow rather than a direct impact. If the stand-on vessel takes action, the giveaway vessel is not relieved of her obligation to keep out of the way and to achieve a safe passing distance.
And the Rule 18, a PD vessel is required to keep out of the way of all the other types of vessel, except where Rule 9, 10, and 13 otherwise require and must avoid impeding the safe passage of a vessel confined by her draft. When Rule 9, 10, 13 applies, Rule 18 is not applicable. A sailing vessel must keep out of the way of the vessel NUC from a vessel engaged in fishing and a PD vessel which is overtaking and avoid impeding the safe passage of the vessel in a narrow channel, traffic lane, or constrained by her draft. A vessel engaged in fishing must, so far as possible, keep out of the way of vessel NUC and ram, and avoid impeding the safe passage of the vessel constrained by her draft. A vessel constrained by her draft shall, when risk a collision with another vessel in a crossing or head-on situation, apply the relevant steering and sailing rules as a PD vessel. IMO guidance. Special rules by local authorities may take precedence over call regs which give additional privilege to a vessel constrained by her draft so that she does not become a giveaway vessel. Local rules. Mariners to consult SD and other publications for details such as special rules. A seaplane which must in general keep clear of all vessels and avoid impeding their navigation. A seaplane which must in general keep clear all vessels and avoid impeding their navigation. A weak craft in flight near surface, landing, taking off, must keep clear of all vessels, avoid impeding their navigation. A WIG craft on water surface is a PD vessel and must comply rules of this part.
So, Rule 19, Conduct of Vessels and Restricted Visibility. This rule applies not only when a vessel is navigating in an area of restricted visibility but also when she is near such an area. This rule applies to vessels not in sight of one another in restricted visibility. The necessity to reduce safe speed will depend upon the speed of the ship, her stopping power, the traffic in the vicinity, and other factors. If visibility is prudent to have the engines on standby as fog can develop rapidly. A PD vessel is required to have her engine ready for immediate maneuver is restricted visibility even in the open ocean. This rule emphasizes the need to take the circumstance of restricted visibility into account when complying with the rules of Section 1 of Part B. So, Rule 19, Conduct of Vessel in Restricted Visibility. Detection by radar alone refers to a vessel which detects another vessel in restricted visibility by radar alone without sighting her visually or hearing fog signal. The distance at which a close quarter situation first applies depend upon a number of factors: the size, characteristics, and speed of the vessels concerned. In restricted visibility, in the open sea, a close quarter situation generally considered to begin to apply of at least 2 nm in any direction forward of the beam as this is the unedible range of ship's vessel in still condition. In order to avoid a close quarter situation in restricted visibility, when action consists of an
alteration of course. A vessel to avoid when overtaking alternation of course towards a vessel approaching from a beam or above the beam or the avoided. So, Rule 19. Conduct of vessels in restricted visibility. A chance of speed is generally more effective as a means of avoiding a close quarter situation with a vessel approaching from near the beam. When a fog signal of any other vessel is heard apparently forward of the beam, the engine should be stopped or speed reduced unless it has been determined that there is no risk of collision. Alteration of course should in general be avoided after hearing a fog signal forward of the beam unless both the position and movement of the other vessel have been reasonably determined. The direction of sound signal may be misleading in fog. Every vessel which hears a fog signal forward at the beam shall navigate with extreme caution and if necessary take way off.